And we are live. We are live. We are live. Look, I stole your lines.
You can steal my lines. I'm okay. You go with it.
I really appreciate you. Like every day, like every minute. Okay.
I know.
All
It's so
right.
good to see you again for the third day in a row.
Yes, it is. I mean, maybe that's why I'm so tired. We've been working so hard on so many important, impactful things that I've been emotionalizing a lot this week.
We can unpack that word a lot.
All right. Well, let me get going because we like to keep these short. Yep. For the moment, I am the time bandit, trapper keeper. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you watching the pre-recorded shows. We are back now for episode 15, our pre-recorded episode of We Built a Bridge. We are here for you, our listeners, so that you can engage and interact with us. After you've listened to this recording, share your feedback in the comments, and we'll discuss them during our next live show, which will be Thursday, May 2nd. So We Built a Bridge was founded with the core interest of creating a funnel of conversation many hesitate to engage in. Christine is a life coach for women, and Colleen, I did it right, is a fractional chief culture and well-being officer to small businesses. How lucky they are. United, we offer different perspectives on communication, culture, and life fulfillment to guide you towards a life with integrity, and curiosity.
Awesome. All right. So in episode 14, we were joined by our wonderful guest, Jessica D. Winder. And for everyone that tuned in, she is a woman known for so many outstanding characteristics, one being that she challenges the status quo. So in that episode 14, we asked Jessica if there was a story or event from her upbringing, her youth, her young adulthood, or even the day before our conversation that took her down this path of questioning the mainstream, if you will. And we did that because, Christine, please correct me if I'm wrong, we are both pretty aligned that oftentimes the phrases letting go of the past or moving on are used in the negative sense to detach us from what happened. But if we do that without taking time for introspection or reflection in order to learn from past experiences, good or bad, we don't grow, we don't heal, and we don't become the badasses that we want to be. So with that, my question to you, Christine Passo, life coach for women, is this. When you have allowed yourself to look within, to do a mental and emotional self-analysis of past life experiences, are there moments that have informed behaviors where once you could see the aha, you said, you know what? These are the behaviors I want to keep. Or maybe you said, yikes, I'm kicking that one to the curb.
I'll tell you this. I mean, you just said a whole lot that I feel could easily create a 30-minute show today, but we're keeping it short. So I'm going to get right to it. So thanks so much for all that, Colleen. And thanks for always setting us up for really intense, but necessary conversation. So thanks for being here with me to have that. So I want to first talk about how impressed I am with Jessica, because the lesson that she spoke about learning after talking about being bullied when she was a teenager, she had a turning point in her life. And I'm so impressed because she was in her most impressionable years when she chose to make a difference, right? She chose to change the course of how she communicated with people and how she set boundaries in her life. I mean, I certainly was nowhere near that. And it made me think about when I was young. Okay. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So when I was really young, I wanted to be a nurse. I knew without a doubt that I wanted to help people in some form or fashion. I just didn't know what that was. So fast forward a little bit to 6th grade when I was 12 years old and I had to have surgery. So I was in the hospital and I got sick. I vomited from the anesthesia like many people do. And when I realized that people in hospitals vomit, I knew immediately that I was not going to be a nurse because it's just been a thing of mine. Perhaps it's something I need to work on. And you know what? I think I will. But anyway, so I digress back to the topic here because where Jessica arrived in some of her life at a teenage time period, I arrived later in life. I like to say that my aha moment for arriving in life was the day that I decided to leave a long-term relationship that unfortunately was toxic and verbally abusive. So I was in my 40s, and because of that, I had allowed a pattern in my life for 4 decades. And the minute that I walked away from that relationship was the moment that I told myself and anybody else I came into contact with was, I will not allow anyone for any reason to mistreat me or step over my boundaries. And I'm going to be honest, that was the first time in my life that I even set a boundary and stuck to it, because I knew what would happen if I didn't. So, I had to experience quite a bit of healing after I left that relationship, but it eventually led me to question myself and my behavior patterns and make a choice, because that's really what it comes down to, right? These aha moments come down to us saying, okay, I'm either going to stick with it or I'm going to make a change. And I chose to set more boundaries and transform my life. And what's really cool is that these very decisions and actions that I've made have invited my career change and so many other outstanding achievements that I now and have been able to step into that I wouldn't have before, right? So if I had stuck with ignoring that aha moment, which unfortunately I think a lot of us do, instead we just make a comment about it and continue on, versus setting some introspective exercises to say, how might I have contributed to that, right? What is it that I could have said and done that could have created a different outcome here? And those were the questions I was asking myself. So, leave an abusive relationship, totally draw a line in the sand, actually in concrete, for what I'm choosing to accept and not accept, and then allow my life to blossom from that. So that's where I'm at right now, Colleen. What about you?
Well, I just want to say this before I jump into mine. Again, being mindful of our time. I think it doesn't matter what age you are or when you come to those moments or how many decades have passed, right? I'm a sucker for phrases that I just drive me crazy, right? So where my mind was going as you were talking is that phrase, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can.
Yep.
It just takes time. And
The dog needs to want to learn.
Exactly. And we need to help guide, right?
Yes.
Which again, when I think about where you are today, that's what makes you so great in the work that you're doing present day. Not only do you have that introspection, but that ability to then guide forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyways, that's just what came up for me. We're never too old for change, ever.
Never.
And that's what's great about it, if you're willing to put in the time and the thought.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so here's my response, and I think again, we always come at it differently, but I think we'll kind of come to the same, somewhat of a some similar comment. So for me, I've always been a fighter. Some would say that I'm of like punch you in the eyes fighter. I am not, but I'm a fighter in the sense of standing up for what I believe. And through a lot of self-reflection work, what I've come to realize is that being the fighter that I am has informed a handful of my core values. And these are core values that I really have spent time identifying over the last year. So it's just things that always came up, but I could never put my finger on it. I was always just like, I'm a fighter. My core values center around integrity, boundaries, going against the grain, and advocacy. So when I ask myself, where did the fighter in me come from? I go to a few places. So one, I'm a middle child. If you know, right? People don't know you're around until they need to know that you're around. So you're somewhat left to your own defenses and how you're going to navigate life. And yes, there are two choices. You can choose to fight or flight. And more often than not, I chose to fight. So not only am I a middle child, I fall in the bucket of Generation X, born to parents who identify as baby boomers. Now, both of these things matter because as a baby boomer, my mother was raised with like a set of standards, right? Defined for her as a woman, defined for her as a wife, and as a professional. She was a working mom. Her and my dad started a business when I was 5 years old. So I bring that, I say these set of standards because that meant that the way life goes, many of these standards are innately passed on, right? They're passed on to me, they were passed on to my sisters. And quite frankly, when I think about them, I didn't like many of them, especially those that had to do with the workplace. So things like work harder than the person next to you, watch your back around both men and women because there's different implications or things that could happen. Keep your head down and don't speak out of line or question authority. Play the game because if you don't, it could ruin your career. And so, again, when I take a step back and think about where I am today and the work that I'm doing and reflecting on this like fighter in me in the workplace, honestly, every single one of these things that I just described in the work impacts our health, both mentally and physically. So when I started working at the age of 13, I tested the waters. And I think why I tested the waters so much is I mentioned my parents were running a business when I was 5. That business was a construction business. My mom, even though she had this set of standards defined for her as a woman, she was the one that collected every penny that was owed to my parents' company, which meant she was a fighter, right? She literally had to fight for money. And so as she's growing, as I'm entering the workplace and watching her push standards, I notice myself like questioning, why can't I take a lunch break? I'm 13, right? I took it upon myself to make the decision to quit a waitressing job on the spot because of a few too many days of like verbal harassment that crossed my line. They crossed over into my boundaries, right? I took many a chance to go around my immediate managers in order to ensure that my voice was heard, knowing that these actions I was taking could very well have negative implications on promotions or raises and maybe even get me fired. And then I remember pushing back on a manager who wanted to groom me for a job that I had no interest in, and then dealt with the backlash because I presented it as ungrateful. And so when I think about where I am today and the work that I've been doing, because it's been for 25 years that I've been working in the workplace culture, and of course the work that I'm continuing to do in that same realm, I want to double down. And I want to continue to create workplace environments that employees truly want to be a part of.
Yeah.
So that's what came up for me in regards to that question.
Wow. So it's almost like you had, when you talked about your values, it's almost like you had, there were 4 of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You listed, it's almost as if you had 4 ahas,
Mm-hmm.
all that fall under each of those categories. Even though it's one umbrella, there are categories under
100%.
that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know for certain there will be a lot of people that have a lot to say about that for sure. But honoring our time, I want to go ahead and wrap us up. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to today's pre-recorded show. We hope to invite oh my gosh.
You can do it, girl. You can do it.
It's all part of that emotionalization that I said I've been going through. So we hope to have invited self-reflection on your end. And if so, we invite you to share with us in the comments. We go live next Thursday, May 2nd on both LinkedIn and YouTube from 12 to 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the topic and question, what patterns or lessons in your life are you learning or not learning from? The reality is, if you're not looking inward to ask yourself questions, there won't be a lesson to grow with. How about that, Colleen?
That's awesome. I can't wait for next week.
Yes. So thank you, everybody, so much. We appreciate you listening. Share with us. This is what we're here for you. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.